Hello friends, welcome to Research Live. I am your host, Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, founder and director of Sengupta's Research Academy and practicing vitreoretinal surgeon in Mumbai. Research Live is a platform meant to ignite the spirit of clinical research amongst all of us. Here I host some of the most eminent researchers in India and am confident that their journey will inspire us all.
It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our guest today, Professor Amod Gupta, to Research Live. Professor Gupta is an emeritus professor at the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, India. He was the Dean and Medical Faculty at PGI Chandigarh between 2011 and 2014 and has served as the head of the Department of Ophthalmology at PGI Chandigarh between 1989 and 2015. He raised one of the most advanced eye care centers in India, the Advanced Eye Center at PGI Chandigarh in the year 2006. He was the founder president of the Uveitis Society of India and has been the past president of the Vitreoretina Society of India. He has had a trailblazing career and has received more than 40 awards till date. Some of the most prestigious are the Padmashree, which is the fourth highest national award for civilian Indians in 2014 by the President of India. He was a recipient of the first B. Patnaik Memorial Oration of the Vitreoretina Society of India in 2011. He received the award of the Teacher of Teachers by the L.V. Prasad Eye Institute in Hyderabad in 2012. He delivered the Dr. G. Venkataswamy Endowment Lecture for the Uveitis Society of India in 2017. He has been at the forefront of clinical research in the fields of retinal and uveal diseases and has published 380 original research papers in peer-reviewed journals. Professor Amod Gupta is best known for his work on ocular tuberculosis, which has led to many seminal papers in this niche field. He described a new entity called tubercular serpiginous-like choroiditis that is recognized all over the world and was published in the journal Ophthalmology in the year 2003. Some of his other highly respected and cited work include he was among the first to characterize fungal endophthalmitis after cataract surgery and described its clinical presentation, microbiological spectrum, and outcomes. He provided initial evidence for recommending statins in the treatment of diabetic macular edema in the year 2004. I am sure all of us are in awe of Professor Amod Gupta for all that he has achieved and are eager to listen to his research and publications journey. So let's hear it from him. Welcome, Professor Gupta, to our show.
To Dr. Sabyasachi for asking me to share my experiences in my research journey and also providing me this opportunity to share my thoughts on your absolute fantastic platform. Thank you very much.
The first question was, how did your clinical research and publication journey start? What motivated you?
There's a little background to this. When I joined my residency in 1974, we used to have a system which was 1 plus 3 years, and they had to compulsorily do a thesis. When I joined, the thesis was abolished and the residency system became 1 plus 2 years. So one of these days, my chief called me and handed over 2 bound copies of thesis and asked me to write a paper. And these subjects concerned the biochemistry of lens and cataract and dealt with subjects like reduced glutathione, soluble proteins, insoluble proteins, lipid peroxidase, and LDH and G6PD, things I had never heard of. So I had to learn the lens biochemistry from scratch to be able to write papers in longhand, which eventually got published in 1975 and 1976, with due credit given to the residents who had done the actual work. And for me, it was essentially a learning exercise which I cherished all my life.
The next thing we wanted to know is, did you have a mentor or someone whom you looked up to?
Jan was my mentor in true sense. In his days, he was forced to reckon with in academic ophthalmology, having done pioneering work in diabetic retinopathy and myopia and intraocular pressure and diabetic retinopathy. He was the first one in the world to suggest that corticosteroids had adverse effect on CSR. I have never seen a more astute clinician and a very sharp observer of clinical science He didn't have access to a fundus camera and slit lamps like what we used to have now, but he used a direct ophthalmoscope and his meticulous notes taking. Some of these things which have he left with me as his legacy, which helped me write so many papers.
The next question was, how and when did you publish your first paper?
I published my first paper in Indian Journal of Ophthalmology in 1979. It concerned a patient of Wolfram syndrome, a rare disease. The patient was admitted under my watch and unfortunately expired. And till that time, it was not known what was the pathology of Wolfram syndrome. And I ran around to get a faculty from the pathology department to do a full autopsy. Unfortunately, we did not find anything significant in his brain or in hypothalamus or other organs. This, to my mind, remains the first published report of autopsy in a Wolfram syndrome. The next, I was assigned by my chief to supervise a junior resident who was doing a prospective study of congenital abnormalities of the newborn and also simultaneously looking at the ocular hazards of birth. This study we published in British Journal of Ophthalmology in 1980, and one of the most frequently cited study on the subject of ocular hazards of birth. On 16th February 1980, there was a major solar eclipse in India. There was a lot of excitement about this eclipse, and we set up a clinic to look for the patients who had solar retinopathy. We did the fluorescent angiography and did the clinical pictures and the fundus pictures. And we published this paper in British Journal of Ophthalmology in 1981. We revisited the subject when we first report of OCT changes in solar retinopathy was published by us in 2004 to show that in solar retinopathy there is damage to the RPE layer and the outer retina.
The next question was, how important is it to start your research journey early, maybe even during MBBS or residency? Do you think it's okay to start late?
Well, it's okay to start your research at any age in your life, but much better to start early. We need to catch young minds, when they are still plastic, the impressionable age. We need to ignite those minds to be able to do research. And for that, I think they need to be exposed to research laboratories of all kinds and varieties in their high school, maybe during their summer breaks, and they can just be hanging around the labs, asking questions, maybe very foolish questions they can ask the researchers, so that they have some curiosity. And if we could, generate that kind of curiosity among the young people, it'll be a great job done. Certainly, they should be exposed to laboratories in their MBBS studies. As I'm sure, a simple example like DNA extraction. 99.9% of the MBBS doctors won't know how to extract DNA. Well, it's one of the foremost technologies now using polymerase chain reaction to be able to make the diagnostics. When they are doing a thesis during post-graduation, it's more of an obligation than any research interest on the part of the student. And by that time, they are really not interested in research, but they're concerned. Their mind is occupied all the time about their career, about their job, and future practice.
The next question was, how important is it to publish your thesis?
It's a reflection of how serious you are in pursuing an academic career. If you did not even publish your thesis, how are you likely to fulfill an obligation as a teacher when you're expected to guide thesis and guide research as a teacher?
The next question was, do you think it is important to have formal training in clinical research methodology before starting your journey, or is it okay to learn on the job?
Well, speaking for myself, I learned research on the job. But if I have to rewind my career and start afresh, I would certainly like to have a formal training in clinical research methodology. We used to have biostatistics as a compulsory subject which we need to clear before we could sit for the exam. It was a small department, very few faculty members, and they had to look after the training of almost 1,000 residents in the institute. They taught us very simple statistics like student t-test or a chi-square test. We were never taught how to calculate, for example, the sample size. What we need now in our country is having a clinical study design units consisting of epidemiologists and biostatistician besides the clinicians to carry out meaningful and impactful research.